Presented by IFCO, champions of a circular supply chain through smart cycle reusable packaging. This is the Fresh CrEd, recorded at the 2025 IFPA Foodservice Conference in Monterey, California. Today, how an international operator leads fresh, balancing quality, value, and sustainability. From exploring supply chains around the world to guiding Monterey Mushrooms, Paul Hardy brings systems thinking, data storytelling, and a leadership philosophy rooted in performance and purpose. Stick with us for lessons on reducing waste, building teams, and why educating buyers is critical. Paul Hardy, let's get into it.
Hey folks, welcome and thank you for joining us here on the Fresh CrEd. We are now being joined by Mr. Paul Hardy, CEO of Monterey Mushrooms. Paul,
Yes, sir.
Thanks for being with us.
Thanks for having me.
Pretty rough day here in Monterey, right? The weather compared
it's
to
just tough out here.
Texas.
Yeah, what a welcome.
Yeah, I don't talk a lot about it before I come out here because nobody's really happy for me.
No.
Particularly my wife.
The drive down here, 2 hours from San Francisco, is just one of the most beautiful drives that you can make on 17. When I first got into the business and I was still living in the Bay Area, I was making that drive on a weekly basis pretty regularly, and I've never had a more beautiful commute in my life. And I've had a lot of long ones and on a lot of different modes of transportation, but I never minded that part.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Although I would argue some of the roads, I grew up, I was sharing with you before we started that I grew up not far from here. Family's from Texas and I live in Texas. I've been out of California longer than I was living in California, but some of the roads here seem like I recognize potholes from when I was in high school.
Oh, no.
So
they have their own issues.
Caltrans,
yeah, for sure.
Got to work on that.
There's a density level that's tough to keep up with here.
But yeah, the weather is hard to beat. I was actually in Southern California at the start of the week, and I made my way up in meetings and wound up here now, and don't leave until late tomorrow. But it is a nice reprieve from the Texas weather.
Yeah. I agree, and it gave me a lot of clarity and understanding why Shaw set up operations the way he did out here, with a real commitment to California and the people, the communities that he was in. But it's a hard place to leave when you grow up in it, for sure. I've never been so attached to one place, unfortunately, but I can see why a lot of those choices were made. And there's a big market to serve.
We were talking about that earlier. To your point, you live in Dallas now.
I do.
But I think you've lived sort of all over.
Yes.
And was it all over the world or all over the United States?
All over the world. My family moved to Chengdu, China in 1993, and my mother, my sister, and I were in Hong Kong for that 1 year. They had offered the job to 3 other individuals, and all of whom brought their families, and left within weeks because it was a hardship post. It was the middle of China in the early 90s, and 3 million people in the city. And outside of the consulate, there were a handful of families that lived there. There were only 2 kids my age. They were Canadians. And so you were a complete foreigner. You know, this was a very big reversal for my own understanding of people. And I came from small towns and grew up in my parents were married very young, so this was a life-changing kind of event for us. Mm-hmm. But to be the minority, truly the minority, gives you a kind of different perspective on everything. So that set the course for the rest of my life. I chased a career in international operations, kind of following in footsteps of my dad, and at some point pivoted. But yeah, it was until 2017, the majority of my career had been outside of North America. I'd never really had any direct responsibilities in the United States. Everything was abroad.
Wow.
Yeah. Little different.
So did you say 40-something times?
43, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it's some of those were deployed 3-month assignments, dragging my wife or my kids around, and my youngest got to experience, just when she was a baby, a little bit of that, but my career kind of kept on going that way, and we just had a lot of moves. My father, when he was an engineer for P&G, we were moving every year pretty much on a regular cadence through my childhood. and then just picked it up, the same pace as I came into my working life.
Was he with P&G his whole career? Or?
17 years, and then, oh goodness, Clorox, ConAgra Foods, Dial, Hospira, Under Armour, Fanatics, Allbirds, and now finally with Traeger. So he's an ops professional, and actually is in a CEO assignment with Meter, which is an acquisition Traeger made that deployed him back over to England for the last couple of years. So my mother and father and their dog were living in Middle England for a while, which gave me a good reason to go and explore. And my oldest daughter's really into history, so she loves Roman history. She studies Latin, and that was kind of a nice confluence of all those events where we could go see castles where the Romans conquered, and then the English, kept conquering themselves for another 1,000 years. But yeah, it's been
awesome.
A fascinating little journey there too.
Well, he had obviously it sounds like a very impressive career as well, and
oh yeah, still going.
With some very impressive companies. A non-produce reference, but you mentioned Hospira. I've been to one of their facilities, and years ago. In Austin, and I think it might have been one of the first, if not the first, automated search and retrieve systems I've ever seen before.
Yeah.
At the time, and it was amazing. And I think the statistic that was thrown at me was that, and I don't remember what kind of IV solution they were manufacturing there, but for that particular IV solution, if you were in a hospital, there was like in the United States, there was a 70% chance that the IV that you were being administered was coming from that facility.
Yeah, and ConAgra Foods, you could put in that bucket these companies that have a big operational footprint and a lot of brands that they support. And my dad was always the guy behind the scenes optimizing everything, supply chains, the purchasing, the centralization of a lot of those efforts, and kind of doing more with less and being more efficient throughout his career. So that's what I grew up in. Everything was about optimization all the time.
So I saw some supply chain references in your profile. And
yeah,
I actually had it as a question way down my list.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it's something
you're
very passionate about.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, what is that now in your current role as CEO, obviously overseeing all aspects of the business? I mean, looking at it through a supply chain lens, what would you say is perhaps the biggest advantage and maybe even a disadvantage? But we'll start, I guess, with an advantage.
Well, I think it kind of tells the story of my career, because I was hustling around building supply chains for big U.S. food manufacturers abroad, helping them solve specific acute issues from market to market or region to region. I felt like I was reinventing the wheel sometimes, and the communication to the center, where we were always a small team that was leveraging big resources, and the way we communicated with them was not very efficient. So I advocated for my own role to be absorbed into this division of ConAgra Foods. I worked at ConAgra. It was the first job that I ever had. And although I had experience in China and some Chinese language skills, I was deployed to Japan, which is probably the best thing that ever happened to me, because trying to take a product like a microwave popcorn that is, somewhat taken for granted by a U.S. consumer. We all know how to use it. We know what it looks like when it's done. We know what it smells like when it's wrong. To a market where, microwave penetration was high. Japanese people had microwaves for decades at that point, but they also maintained their equipment very, very well. And so the age of these microwaves was much different from the average age of a microwave in the U.S., with metal turntables and things like that.
Wow.
And receptor plate in our bags that didn't agree with that we didn't really account for. So from the beginning, that whole project had some inherent issues that we had to address, along with the just Japanese expectation of quality, period. My first vivid memory of a major project that I felt like had an impact was we were getting full container loads rejected by the distributor partner, who was a 150-year-old rice cracker manufacturer named Kameda Seika. Learned a ton from those guys. They had no marketing department and a 90% share of the category. They just put it on the shelf and people will buy it, and maintain your quality standards and meet what the consumer is expecting. But they were rejecting these loads because of creases in the outer shipper of our boxes from the transit that they were going through this long supply chain. And we were fighting that battle because we couldn't fix it. The strength of the corrugate, you're going through all the different options, and still they were making these rejections. And I went and hand unloaded an entire container with their team, with notes documenting the width of the crease and the subsequent impact on the inner boxes, which would be the selling unit, and finding some agreement in the middle that said, hey, here's how we could repack these because they're actually okay. Little details like that taught me, what's important about the preparation to launch into a new market, period, because this was with extensive resources. The devil is in the details, and they set a bar like no other consumer does. We got handwritten letters from Japanese consumers about our products once we were in retailers across the country, and it was a very humbling, process that I was trying to translate back to a very confident, high-powered manufacturing team in the actual original microwave popcorn factory in the country, as far as I understand, Golden Valley Microwave Foods in Edina, Minnesota. So I was spending all of my time in the U.S. in the factory trying to help them understand the consumer expectations we were trying to meet. And the other part of my time in that first year, I was in Japan 15 times, and living basically at the distributor partner, and got my own desk, which was not a good thing, right? Like we shouldn't have had to invest that much into it, but we did, and I learned a lot, and had some great mentors that taught me how to prepare for that battle every day, and I've taken that with me through my career. The planning side of it, and I touched on the communication internally at ConAgra, opened some doors for me that when I went to Hershey's, I was able to learn under a guy named Jason Ryman, who taught me how S&OP can really help both the sales and marketing efforts of a company and the operational efficiency. I saw them invest in demand planning across the company and grow that team from a handful of people to dozens of people dedicated to the front end of the business and knowing what's coming so that we could confidently set up operations to support it. And I've taken that lesson and those fundamentals everywhere I've gone. It also got me into the demand side of the business for the first time. Gotten to see how commercial decision makers made those choices, what were the drivers. I was deployed, once I learned in Pennsylvania with them, I was deployed out to our international business units, and I had some great leaders there that took me under their wing, saw the value in what this process was bringing to them to be able to tighten up their P&Ls, to deliver customer expectations more consistently, and build their teams more confidently about resources and what do you need. And it's integrated business planning. It's actually a level up from S&OP. It's not just supply and demand balancing, but it's the cause and effect of every choice we make in the company and how it ties to our bottom line.
Sure.
And I think that's why I'm here at Monterey.
Well, that's all great stuff, and a lot of detail you mentioned. I mean, that's for somebody that's in supply chain, or I would even, because my day job is in supply chain nerd.
Yeah,
somebody that's it's the fun stuff, right?
It's very real time. You get to see that cause and effect a lot more quickly. But it did pivot me as well. I mean, I actually ended up working for my first private equity job back in 2010. Moved to South Florida to take on a direct sales role that allowed me to see the front line of selling, which had always been a bit of a necessary evil as a planner. They always came back with excuses around non-performance and all the things that interrupted our great plans that we put on paper. And I respected the work, but I didn't have a firsthand knowledge of what they were up against. And this was van sales delivery. I had a minivan that we took the seats out of, and a container of Swiss chocolate bars that were sent to a warehouse in Miami. Made my own polo shirts, built some marketing materials.
That's hardcore sales.
Yeah, it was what I wanted. It was the experience. I needed to jumpstart. I was, years into my career at that point, and I needed to get that experience to have more commercial responsibility, which my father gave me some good advice at the time and said, look, it's a harder path through operations to lead a business completely. And he'd experienced that. Like I said, he's just gotten his first CEO assignment, which has been great for us to have those dialogues, but owning marketing and sales fully, and the finance and everything. So I knew that was what I wanted to do, and I had this gap in my own kind of knowledge and experience, so that helped me jumpstart it. And when you're selling to an independent convenience store owner that owns 1 or 2 or 10, Shell gas stations in South Florida, it's a very, very humbling experience. And it was a volume game. I had to hit 53 stores every single day. It was trial. We were setting up test markets in Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Tampa, and eventually Jacksonville. And setting up distributor partners and having their stickers in the back of my van that said, where do you order from? Here's where you're going to replenish. And then hustling over to them to say, hey, I got 6 customers that want this, and you need to have it in your warehouse. So learned a lot of lessons in that in a very, very short amount of time. And
chocolate in Florida in the summertime.
Unfortunately, I do champion the sustainability story of mushrooms, but I have to admit that there were nights I had to leave my minivan running all night long just to protect my inventory because I had no refrigeration in the apartment that my family was living in, and it was too far to get back to the warehouse and hit my routes. So it was a totally unique kind of jumping off point for me that I've never really looked back from. I did go back to ConAgra in a commercial capacity with a really small P&L, $7.5 million in revenue, and it was Europe and Africa was my mandate, and it ranged. My 2 cornerstones of that business were Iceland and South Africa. So everything in between was kind of, they were good businesses with great distributor partners, but the brands had been built based on the focus of those distributors. And my job, really, what I learned quickly was to listen to them and help ConAgra get out of its own way, and in some ways develop some packaging that allowed us to, not fight every day on regulatory. And I started to learn how to target different markets and how to manage a broad portfolio. We had 10,000 SKUs and 80 brands to choose from, and that was the mandate. Find where these can fit into these other cultures, and you get to learn food cultures, which is what I've loved about the business. I've always been a food tourist, and when you are working around food, a lot of the conversations end up being at a dinner table somewhere. Whether that happens in every industry, it happens with a little different, weight when you're in the food business. And I've always enjoyed that experience and got to try, everything. I'll never say no. I may not come back for it again, but I've eaten some very strange stuff.
To growing businesses internationally, I'm actually coming into the conversation. I was going to ask, what the most significant difference in driving the business internationally versus domestically would be. And one of the first things I thought of, I know there's variety, and I've traveled abroad as well. And I was going to say, or I was going to presume that perhaps you would say more options in North America, perhaps, but based on what you just said, I think I'm going to change my answer or change my question. But
please.
What would you say are the largest differences or the largest difference in driving business internationally or globally versus domestically? When you think about what's important to either the business or the consumer, or
well, a fundamental thing was we had a pretty thin budget on travel, relatively speaking, to the scope of the job, the geography of the job. I was a relatively savvy international traveler at that point already, but that was the first thing I did, is put those travel dollars to work, and I bought one-way tickets across the world, which put some tax on my family and on your own kind of lifestyle. I was an avid basketball player. I couldn't join leagues. I couldn't really join a golf league. I couldn't commit to anything because I didn't know how long I'd be gone next. But these were 3-week trips where I would just try to be present and listen and show up, and I think that kind of human interaction and the relationship building was something that's always stuck with me. And what I'm in the middle of right now in a new industry, I don't really know another way but to go and meet people and talk to them and see what they see and understand them a little better. So
it sounds old-fashioned now.
It does, yeah.
But it's still the truth.
Yeah.
It's the reality. And just from what you've shared so far, enjoying the struggles that you've been through and that you've experienced. I think that's what's fun for all of us. I start thinking about, boy, I can't believe I did that, and I can't believe I did this. But, at the time it didn't seem like you were building anything, but you're building a career, you're building experience, you're building relationships.
When you get to see the results, and to be fair, I've had, my career, I've had these I was at ConAgra in that commercial capacity for 6 years. Again, that was a much longer time frame than I had ever had committed to any one endeavor outside of hoops, in my life. That was the only thing that I dedicated that much time and focus to. And when you get to see the results on the back end and all those little pieces of the puzzle, and it's much bigger than you, but you're a part of it, and bringing that together, it's very rewarding. I always appreciated that.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned basketball, so
yeah,
clearly that's a hobby.
it is.
Golf is another hobby. Anything else that you're particularly passionate about, or if you could snap your fingers, what you would be doing if you weren't doing what you're doing today?
I had golf, basketball, and food. Honestly, that's
Golf,
my life is
and
pretty
food.
simple in that respect. I just feel like the experiences from all of those. So team sports, golf has been a different venture. I was never the most confident athlete. I was always a very self-disciplined athlete, and I had to I motivated myself more through fear of failure than confidence that I'm always in the right place at the right time. Golf kind of leveled all of that. Humbling, and there's nowhere to look. You're and it wasn't very enjoyable when I looked at it from this competitive. I got to be Tiger Woods every time I step on the tee box, which is why I never played golf as a child. I never had the temperament. It's been a part of it parallels my growth, I think, and golf is really my new passion. My ankles don't love basketball as much as they used to, but I still have a dream that I'll get back into some over 40 leagues at some point.
Well, I'm sure there's plenty of availability where you're at.
Oh, yeah. There's
that's
a
the
lot.
thing about Dallas is there's plenty to do.
You can find anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know the name of it, but there's like an IMAX sports bar there. I've seen it on social media.
I've seen pickleball everywhere.
Oh,
and
well,
that seems to
pickleball
be,
is...
yeah. And I'm yet to venture into pickleball, but who knows? Who knows?
My daughter, she played tennis when she was younger, but she came back from camp this summer and was really geeked up about pickleball.
Really?
Yeah. So
yeah, it seems like people take to it quickly.
They seemed like they had a lot of fun. She said we played pickleball every day.
Yeah.
She's a basketball player, and I just expected she was going to be playing basketball or some of the other activities that they had.
Translates the hand-eye coordination.
But I wasn't expecting pickleball, so
no.
I don't know. I might go out and try it.
Yeah, tell me when you do.
Well, a lot of the organizations, so we're involved with, Viva Fresh Expo. This year will be in San Antonio, and we're working on the planning phases right now, and a lot of these trade shows, the reality is you're only serving a very small percentage of the attendees by having a golf tournament. Even if you max it out at 300 or 400 people and you're having 3,000 or 4,000 people showing up, there's a lot more folks to engage with, and so pickleball's been added to a lot of events.
I am a little sad that I've missed the golf business era a little bit. Like, it's not that it's gone, for sure, but I do try to weave it in whenever I can. I haven't seen the pickleball.
You're talking about from a networking perspective?
Just, doing business, going to the events and the golf tournaments that come with them sometimes. I've seen it more on the creative side in the music industry, film. Pickleball is definitely the preferred, kind of sports team building.
It's a time investment, I think.
It's easier.
Yeah, it's a little bit easier. And to your comment on, golf from a business perspective, great fundraiser.
Definitely.
Kind of like when you force folks together. In other words, you give them the excuse to force them together, but on a day-to-day basis, I think business in general is just moving at such a pace that
it's hard to carve that time out.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's hard to compete with that time.
I'm playing in a member guest next week that I'm already trying to figure out how I'm going to juggle, and it's hard to disconnect sometimes. Just in the phase of my own development within this company is a big part of that. But I try to, if I can find another business partner, someone that I'm engaged with, and we can have a discussion on a golf course, I'm all about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. In Dallas, well, Summertime's pretty hot, but
You learn a lot about people in golf too. There's
Yeah.
Well,
when I first started playing, I lived in Las Vegas, so that gets pretty hot.
yeah. Morning golf.
And I was always looking for a deal. I was really young when I lived there, so
Yeah,
it's very
exactly.
expensive.
To play in the mornings, especially.
It's very expensive to play in the morning, so I
Yeah.
was playing afternoon,
Yep. Me
twilight
too.
discount,
Me too.
walking around with an umbrella.
Yeah.
Going back to the international aspect of kind of the conversation, I was, I'd asked you about differences driving the business and driving performance and growth. What about from a culture perspective? When you think about like all your travels and all of your assignments, what would you say is the biggest difference holistically between, culture internationally from a business perspective and North America?
Well, I mentioned my parents were married young, 17. I was born at 20. I went to college classes with my dad at the University of Florida on the back of his motorcycle with a squirrel in his hoodie. He had a pet squirrel named Scooter. That's a true story.
Sounds like a movie or at least a children's book.
I was in a trailer park with Smurf curtains. I remember those days of our family's life, and to know what moving to China and kind of breaking all the paradigms that I thought, I held pretty tightly to, being willing to kind of step back from a moment and just listen. Those lessons are things that I have served me so well in business. Just being a bit patient with people
And bold.
and trying to understand.
Those are bold moves.
Yeah. The commitment from the family and my father's courage of conviction around why we were doing this and what it meant to us and the experiences that we gained from it are things that I take into every conversation that I'm in. So, yeah, it's core to me.
Yeah.
And it does help, I think, in all of these endeavors with people, generally speaking.
That's why mentors are so important,
Yeah.
I've had my mentors in my life for sure, but I felt like now I lament, and of course it's always easy to go back and say, well, I wish I would have done more sooner, or I wish I would have focused on this sooner, and obviously none of us know really in the end where we'll wind up.
Absolutely.
But it sounds like you had a great mentor.
Yeah.
And your careers are similar in path, and I actually was going to ask about that, and I think I already have my answer. You had somebody that you looked up to that was that you were mirroring, to a certain degree. I mean, how could you
Very
not?
fortunate.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. You're very lucky. Shortening that curve. Now I think with social media and micro-learning and podcasts and everything that we're into now that I wish would have existed 20 years ago. I look at my kids and
the sharing of information.
Some of it they kind of shrug off and blow off, but I also see them from a I'm using, it's kind of a lame term I think, but the micro-learning actually
It's real.
Yeah, it's real.
Exposure, understanding other ways of doing things and seeing those be successful, understanding different people's motivations. There's a lot of noise to filter through.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's the core benefits of that sharing are, I think, fundamentally moving us forward, at a much higher rate, and that's exciting. I agree.
Productivity. I mean, I think about, somebody was asking me, what podcasts I listen to and when, for example, it's not really conducive to be listening to podcasts when you're trying to do, budgets or something like that, right? So
car time sometimes.
But it is car time. It's yard time. It's
on the lawnmower.
Projects. It's whatever, and I mean, it makes time go by so fast, and
it does.
I'm amazed by.
It's usually how I start my mornings.
Really?
Just getting some news. That's my feed typically, is from different podcasts and folks that I can dial in a little bit on the way they share information that I can trust. Yeah. Fresh CrEd.
Yeah, it's going to be the new go-to.
That's right.
I listened to, Mason started listening to Joe Rogan a lot longer before I did, but I don't remember what wound up making me actually download the app so I could listen to it, but he recently had a physicist on. I had to listen to that podcast 3 times, and I still think I only understand 20% of what he said.
He is a multifaceted guy, yeah, for sure.
But I think what impressed me more than anything was the level that there are people in the world that think at the level that this physicist did.
Oh, right. Yeah.
I'm not sure I understand all the concepts still. He was talking about, all of us living in a virtual reality and telekinesis and
Interesting.
yeah, I mean, it was a lot
Way
to
out
take
there.
on.
Yeah.
It was way out there, but
Yeah.
his conviction, he's dedicated his life to it. I mean, there's clearly basis for his work. Just the fact that there are folks that have that kind of brain power.
And are dedicated, that have that focus, right? That's the thing.
We must just look
professional
like
athletes, like the
chimps
focus.
to them, walking around. I mean, I know I would. I mean, if I was that smart. So
Yeah. I think as long as those folks can bring facts to the table, that's kind of my entry level stakes. As long as there's
responsible.
Yeah, and the follow-up question and the layer 1 and layer 2 of the detail, that they're prepared and have at least given some consideration. That's my filter with everything I do internally in our company. There's, as you can imagine, when you got a lot of employees and a lot of facilities, there's a lot of feelings that come from different experiences that they've had. I will always listen to those. The next time with the follow-up, I'm looking for some documentation. Like I'm looking for just a couple extra facts, and I pull those threads pretty hard. Sometimes that's a little scary, but I try to create environments where people learn to trust that bringing the truth to the table is never going to be the thing that has a negative impact on your career or your goals that you had for bringing that information to light. It's what you do with it, and it's the way you back it up, and it's the way you engage others. So there's a great Netflix PowerPoint out there from, I can't remember, the early 2000s, where they put out their company culture kind of mandate and what they were looking for. And they have a section on brilliant assholes and how they will kill a culture, right? You can have these really high performers that are deep in their field of knowledge. And I've had them come to me in the past where they'll tell me everything that everybody should have done, and they're right. And my first question to them is, how much time did you spend with those people helping them to prevent this issue versus, happily lording it over them once the fire is burning? I don't celebrate firefighters. I celebrate the people that help us avoid the fire. I think that's a really fundamental piece of how I try to run a business. So.
Plenty of fires in the fresh produce business too, though.
There are.
Right.
And you can get stuck there, right? Because we do need those folks to help every time. And it's always with a thank you. And it's always with, how do we never do this again?
Sure.
And I've been on the back end of a few businesses that have had, inherent issues in their structure, where people are fighting uphill every day just to kind of get the right things done. But they can't figure out how to get out of it because it's not going to come from one individual's effort. It really requires a lot of communication and discipline and letting go of some of the things that we feel are very important, but proving to ourselves the fundamental key pieces that are critical to making good decisions and really committing to those. And if you can't, the pressure moves up the organization, not down. So if management is delivering a strategy and the team on the ground is trying to help you understand that there's gaps in delivering that metric, we'd all like to know exactly what that cost per square foot is, but here's the things that are required to support it. And either the management team is going to say, okay, it's worth investing because I said it's important, or they're going to adjust their expectations. And that's not always typical, right? We just push harder sometimes and say, figure it out. And sometimes people do. But I try to build a system where that is a two-way street, and it puts the right pressure in the right places.
So aside from, the obvious difference, which is perishability, fresh produce versus
12-month shelf life, career, center store,
anything?
Oh yeah, I got a taste of it in eggs, really truly. I mean, that's where I cut my teeth in agriculture. I had been a part of these big food companies that bought from suppliers that worked from the ground up, and didn't have the perspective that you get when you're in that fight and in those trenches every day. And we had a business that needed to change. In the egg industry, we had a role that we needed to play, but it wasn't really clear to everyone. And a lot of that truth lied in our data first. That's where I usually turn. I really try to get deep on the financials and the costs and understanding what drives the biggest costs in the company and what has the most risk. There's a lot of risk management in the way I lead. but then actually going and sitting alongside and understanding what it takes every day to deliver the daily work on a farm, which every day is Monday. A customer doesn't care that it was a second shift or a third shift or a Sunday shift. They care that they get their spec, that we hit their quality expectations at the right price at the right time. And there is, I think, an emotional attachment from some buyers to a specific farm. That's beautiful. I want to pour fuel on that fire. But the way that they manage the decision making is not solely based on that. And those relationships are meaningful, but they won't be the final driver of the decisions on who wins that business. And I think that starts with a commitment to the daily work. And that means the management team is on the shop floor doing gimbal walks. We have an order of operations, people safety, food quality, and our costs. That's the mandate that we're driving through our farms everywhere we work. So I learned that in the egg industry, very real time, with a very intense mandate to get it figured out. And we did, and we built a really good machine there that persists, and I'm really proud of that team. Very similar to mushrooms, not publicly traded. You can't go buy futures of eggs, just like you can't buy futures of mushrooms, which leaves a lot of gray areas in how business gets done. And I think as an outsider, it's also a family-centric kind of industry. I've built a reputation there of being inclusive and really trying to build bridges and not trying to, own 100% wallet share of anybody's business, because when I look at that risk management, that means I also own 100% of their issues if there's a hiccup in our supply chain somewhere. Yeah. I'd much rather have more balance with partners across the industry that we work with together, and we balance our risk that way, but we also service that customer better holistically. So I've been on the road trying to build those bridges here, and it's starting, and it's been a very welcoming industry, and mushrooms are even tighter than the egg business just by the nature of the biosecurity required to run a commercial layer farm. And what I've seen is there's not really a mushroom brand out in the marketplace. When you get into exotics and other things, maybe, but not so much in the Agaricus bisporus table mushroom, right? But the product is our brand, and the experience that we're trying to create when we bring people to that shelf has gotten a little bit uncertain for some people, and there's a real focus on food waste, and people don't want to pull something into their house that then they feel accountable for using if they don't understand how long they've got to use it and the best ways to use it. So there's a lot of education that needs to continue to happen. There's a millennial and Gen Z consumer that maybe haven't grown up with this as a staple part of their diet, or if they did, they didn't understand how all of that came together. And so we've got to find innovative, creative ways to meet them where they want to be met, and also touch on some of the traditions of the industry. And I think Monterey can tell that whole story from soil to powder,
And then, so, I think there's also something there for what I would call like super users.
Yeah, absolutely. Which is 80% of our volume.
Mushroom and coffee fanatic.
Yeah.
So awesome. I start the day every day with mushroom and coffee, and have for several years.
I'm new to it, but
it's fantastic.
It is.
I love
agree.
It. I have it in powdered form. I have it as a supplement. I have it in a bunch of different ways. But even myself, that's in retail very frequent, I haven't made the bridge yet from raw to my own processing or my own adaptation.
Yeah.
That I want to get there, but if I'm not there yet, there's a ton of folks out there.
I would have put the same hat on and said, look, I'm in the food space, and the small piece of knowledge that I had, the awareness I had of what functional mushrooms can do for people. The only related kind of understanding I had was in eggs, where phosphatidylcholine and some of the benefits of the egg yolk, that you can't get these compounds anywhere else, or not in the concentration and bioavailability that you can get out of an egg. That taught me a little bit of that, and now I've got this entire species that can deliver on those commitments to people in different ways, and they're already exploring it, but they're doing it a little bit around the fresh mushroom space. And I think that connection is a bridge that Monterey is really committed to building. I think we have, the mandate here to tell that story all the way through, and we can, and we are, and we're gonna keep looking for ways, the usage occasions, what are people really solving for, and trying to dial in our innovation towards that end, and making those connections, because they do belong together.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I'm excited to see what's coming.
Me too, man.
I'm hopeful. Big mushroom fan. Thank you so much for being with
Ed.
us. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. It's still early in the day here at the Foodservice Conference. I'm sure you'll make your way down to the show floor.
Gonna go meet as many people as I can.
Sneak out for some fresh air every once in a while because it's so nice. But,
it is.
Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Ed.
Hopefully it won't be the last time. And good luck the rest of the day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's Paul Hardy, Global Leadership by Building Better Systems. Before we go, 3 simple truths anyone can take to heart. Make it easier to do great work. Good systems matter most. Facts matter. Tell the story behind the numbers. Help people use what they buy, especially mushrooms. Thanks, Paul. Presented by IFCO. Series support: Wiggins Farms, IFCO, Little Bear Produce, Misionero, Sunfed, Bourne Farms, and the International Fresh Produce Association. Follow and share this series.